start with figuring out how much you need to pay yourself to support your personal life. I think there's this idea that more revenue is always better, right? Grow, 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 what success is. And that's not true. Success is you achieving whatever goal you have set out for yourself. And if your goal is to be able to support your personal life and also spend time with your kids or travel or take off 8 weeks a year, whatever your goal is. That's what success is. And that doesn't always mean earning more money. And I think starting with being really intentional about what you actually need to pay yourself and getting clear on that number helps give you a goal that you're working towards instead of this vague idea or this really goal you can never achieve of more is always better, right?
Yeah.
Because when is more enough?
Taking a minute to be myself, don't need no help. We keep on rising.
Okay, we are back in the studio. This is Connie Davis, your host of Unlocking Commerce in Business. I am really excited to continue this conversation around small business this month. Last episode and last month, we spent some time continuing the journey into the commerce conversation and what commerce actually is. And today I have this amazing guest of mine, Kim Pike-Walters. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Connie. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a good conversation today because you're in all things kind of money coaching. You have this really strong background in corporate finance. So I know we can probably share some of those stories and testaments of experiences that we've had. But you are now in business for yourself. You run KPW Financial Coaching out of San
Yes,
Diego. I'm a
correct.
Californian myself, so I now live in Florida, but really resonate with some of the work that you're doing in the community for tax preparation and lower income families. I think that that's so important because there's such a financial literacy and financial confidence conversation to have in every community. But, for my audience, as we continue talking and kind of unpacking what commerce actually means in business and how we protect it in our communities, this season has all been about really getting into some of the basics, Kim, of
Hmm.
commerce and what enables commerce. And when commerce happens and there's an exchange, of a service or a product or a good that's being sold, all of the things that it wraps around inside of businesses as business owners or solopreneurs to do. So today I really want to spend some time kind of unpacking how your work really kind of sits at that intersection of these places where commerce gets, kind of blocked and barricaded. And we always start out with every guest I ask, what is your definition of commerce? And then I want to go into a little bit more of your background and your story.
So that's a great question. And honestly, it's not something I had thought about very much before we started talking and I was coming on this podcast. So I think kind of what I've come to is commerce is really it's a win-win scenario. It's you gladly exchanging your money for a service or a good that you are getting, right? You're fulfilling the need of somebody else by giving them your hard-earned money, and they're fulfilling your need by giving you that product or service that is helpful for you.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that, you know, we pause to think about what commerce is because that's the whole point we're in business. And so many people go, I got to have a business. I want, they get a job, they go to work, they don't understand where they're fitting into the commerce ecosystem and who the stakeholders are in the communities around them that they're working in. So this show is about pausing and really talking about when it stops flowing, why it stops flowing, what sort of things are impacting the flow of commerce between entities or buyers and sellers, and really bringing value to the conversation about all the amazing work that financial coaches like yourself, people that empower small businesses are doing. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started in this work, and what keeps you going every single day.
Yeah, so I graduated from UCLA. I got my CPA license shortly thereafter and was working in corporate finance for about 13 years. And the money was great. The people were mostly great, but I started to get a little frustrated with some aspects of the job and also just a little disillusioned, right? I had this idea as I was getting started in my career and progressing that I'd put in my dues at the beginning and I'd work my way up. And then I'd get more flexibility and more control over my time, right? The stereotype I have in my mind of like, oh, bankers are off golfing every afternoon or the VPs, something like that, wherever I got that from. But I realized as I started progressing, at least in my experience, that it was actually the opposite. The higher you progressed in a company, the more they expected of you, right? They were paying you more, so they expected more of your time in return. And I realized that that is not the life that I wanted. And it took a while, and I think I'm still processing some of that a little bit, right? I very much had this ingrained idea of success being my job title and being how much money I made. And so going from this job where I was making great money to now working for myself and really building a business from a ground up has been a bit of an identity shift for me. And it's been very interesting, but I digressed a little bit. So going back to my story, so I started getting a little disillusioned with corporate finance, but I didn't know what else I wanted to do because that's always what I'd done. So I started thinking about what I like doing in my free time, thinking that that might be a good clue to something I might like to do as a career. And one of those things is volunteering as a tax preparer for a program called Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, VITA. It's a program through the IRS, and we do free taxes for low to moderate income families. And I've been doing that for over 10 years now. And I keep coming back year after year. I originally I thought it was the tax prep, but I learned during COVID that while I like the tax preparation piece of it, what really keeps me coming back is that ability to positively impact somebody's life. Like I had one
Mm.
tax client years ago who was so grateful for my help that she offered to tip me. I was like, no, 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 I can't accept your money, nor do I want to. But I had just done her taxes and I saw how little money she had to spare, yet she was so grateful that she wanted to share some of that with me. And that just showed me how big of an impact a little bit of financial help can have in someone's life. And so when I learned about financial coaching, something just like clicked for me. I was waking
Mm.
up early before my alarm because I was so excited. That doesn't happen very often. And I wanted to just quit my corporate job immediately and go full time into my business because I was just that excited about the ability to really help people, but see the impact that I could have in their life and be part of a transformation. I know that word's kind of cliche, but be part of that transformation for them, that identity shift they might have of themselves.
Oh, but Kim, you know what? That activates parts of me because I think in similar paths we've had similar kind of aha moments where you just kind of wake up one day and you're like, is this the impact that you want to make with your life, right? Because we're investing all sorts of time and energy and focus and cognitive labor in some of our roles and positions that I think a lot of people are actually feeling that. They want to exchange their time and knowledge in places that really value that expertise, not just kind of crank through it. So I think you're not alone. That's probably why we
Yes,
have the
yes.
term the great awakening or the great
Yeah.
resignation. It comes from a very spiritual place. And I think a lot of people from the COVID experiences where we were all we had a lot of time to think about things and we had a lot of time to kind of process what really feels aligned And, then when you get back out there and you're able to connect, it just doesn't feel the same. You don't go back to whatever that normal was. So I've heard similar stories like that. But to touch people's lives, and I'll share a little bit about Vita in our community, and I'm here in Florida. There's a lot of nonprofits, and I do a lot of work with nonprofits where volunteers are absolutely needed for Vita, and they go into the nonprofits, and Vita is that service that helps people get over really, mental taxing scenarios where they don't understand the forms and they don't understand all of the rules around the IRS and what the IRS is doing and how to prepare all of that information. Heck, they probably don't even have their statements and their data collected all the time. And I'm sure you've got stories about
100%.
that. But there's
Yeah.
such a need for it to increase confidence and then to do that without judgment and shame, which is usually a big stigma for people that are helping in this space is how do you do that without shame and judgment? And what you
Yeah.
just shared with us is that you did and you do, and people appreciate that. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing that
Thank you.
because right there you unlocked a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about the kind of the theme for today's show that I wanted to spend some time on is the importance of financial clarity for the small business owner, the solopreneur, even a small partnership with, people collaborating in business entities now, limited partners or partnerships. There's a lot of people dealing and carrying a lot in the face of technology, in the face of economics and the changing landscape. What are you seeing out there? Like, what are the top three things that your clients come to you with?
Yeah, so I would say one of the most common things my clients come to me for at the beginning is not knowing where their money is going. Right? So most people have a pretty solid idea of what's coming in,
Yeah.
but not as strong of an idea of what's going out, right? And I think part of that is many people use credit cards, right? So you're swiping $5 here, $10 there, $30 here, and all of a sudden you see your credit card bill at the end of your statement period, and you're like, whoa, how did I spend $1,000 on various things? So
Yeah.
I think that is one challenge, and I think it's really twice as much of a challenge for small business owners because you're managing your personal finances and your business finances. And also there's a lot less predictability in your income, right? If you have a job where you're getting paid the same amount every 2 weeks or some sort of recurring time period, it's one less thing to manage, right? If you say this equation is revenue minus expenses or income minus expenses, for most people, it's like, okay, we focus on the expense side. But for small business owners and solopreneurs, you're really having to look at both sides of the equation. So it just kind of compounds. And that I think is a foundation for a lot of other things, because if you're not sure where your money is going, it's hard to figure out what problem you're solving for and what opportunities are and how to address it.
Yeah.
So I'd say, go ahead.
No, it's okay. So is that the top one? Is that the main one? What are the other two? What other things are you seeing as far as like maybe smaller themes?
Yeah, so that is a big one. I think another one is people just weren't taught how to do this, right? We're not taught about money in school. You Google the word budget and you probably get a million results. And most traditional budgeting advice is not made for people with inconsistent income. It's not made for solopreneurs and small business owners. It assumes you have the same amount of money coming in every single month and you look at your expenses. And so many people with inconsistent income may have tried that and then maybe it didn't work and they felt like they failed.
Mm,
That's another thing. I would say a big one too is accountability. I can only speak for myself, but I know there's some times I'm like, oh, I just went to this great workshop and I took all these notes and I'm so excited about it. And then 3 weeks later, they are stuffed in my drawer somewhere and I've forgotten about it and I'm on to the next thing. And I think some people experience that with money too, right? Maybe there's some acute period of distress that makes them think, well, here, let me use an example. I had one client who was unemployed. She unfortunately had been laid off. So she was feeling this more acute financial stress at the time. We were working together to kind of help figure out where things were going, etc. But she was, as we were working together, she was had just lined up a new job, very exciting for her. But you could already kind of see when I was talking with her about what might get in the way of making these changes you're excited about now. And that was starting her job,
Mm.
right? You no longer having that distress because you're like, oh, I have money now. And so there's these changes that would be really impactful for her to make and make a positive impact for the rest of her life, but it doesn't feel as urgent now, right? And we're being bombarded with so many things in life that all feel urgent. So you really have to prioritize what gets your attention. So I think for a lot of people, they have great intentions, they have great ideas, and for one reason or another, they don't follow through, right? Maybe a scenario like what I said, or a lot of times it's hard, right? Like you get started and something doesn't go how you thought it would, or another big expense comes up, or something happens where you're like, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to go back to what I was doing before. The
Yeah.
status quo is easier than trying to figure this out by myself.
So if these are the top 3 for you, and you're all the way on the other coast. I'm listening to go, okay, if this is going on in San Diego, it's sure going on in Florida. It's
Yeah.
surely going on in every state, or even around the world, potentially, depending on kind of the nature of the business, because I think we're all in the same boat. We're all carrying this. How do I exchange my value? How do I make sales to make my business viable so I can do all of the things and then still reach the dream picture of what a perfect business running would look like if I was to able to sell the thing or, provide the service that I want to do. But you're mentioning things that are getting in the way. You're mentioning things like, even just burnout and the emotional
Hmm.
tax. So let's unpack that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about how you coach the clients that you work with through these types of, let's call them peaks and valleys, because I think that there's probably some relevancy there where you just said, it was like, I have this new job. Well, now I'm on a peak and then there's a valley. So let's use that analogy for a second and let's talk about like the things that you found your clients really respond to, that maybe are like some micro skills that the listener today could maybe take with them.
Yeah. So I'll use an example of one of my small business owner clients because in her scenario, we could talk about burnout a little bit and also this idea of peaks and valleys. And so when she came to me, she was making almost $200,000 a year in revenue, but still felt like she was living paycheck to paycheck. And she'd
Mhm.
been trying things and she just felt kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges for her was her business was a bit more seasonal. And so during some months, she'd have more sales and things felt fine during that time, plenty of money to cover the expenses. And in the slower months, then things started feeling really stressful. So, another example of how you might go through these periods where your distress is a bit more acute. And then other times where you're like, it's okay, it's fine, right? You kind
Yeah.
of forget about or block out that more stressful period of time. So, one of the first things that we did working together, and obviously for the listeners, everyone's starting from a different place. So, this is just what we did in her example.
Mhm.
But one of the things we did was to try and bring in more consistency to start out with her personal finances. So, she was paying herself different amounts at different periods of time, just sort of haphazardly.
Yeah.
Whenever whenever she was running out of money in her personal account, she would run payroll and pay herself. And that created a lot of like mini crisis situations because it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to overdraft my checking account. I need to run payroll. And then there's usually a delay between when you send money from one bank to another, things like that. So, what we did is we first figured out how much money she needed to pay herself from her business to cover her personal expenses. And then once we figured that out, we got her on a schedule for consistently paying herself. And
Oh,
so
great.
for her, she chose to do weekly. So she was paying herself the same amount every single week. And now all of a sudden, we have consistency with her personal finances, right? And so now it functions a little bit more like a traditional corporate job where you're getting the same amount every week. So that was really helpful for her. And we're layering in similar elements for her business as well by kind of building up some reserve accounts so that in the months that are busier, she can pay herself the same amount both to her personal account and into her operating expense account for her business, and then kind of build up a buffer or build up some reserves so that when the months are slower, she has that money set aside. So again, we're inserting consistency into a situation where it's inherently not consistent, but you're still getting the benefits of it.
Yeah, but I hear the word stability in there, and that means maybe less emotional turmoil too, just by doing that one little thing. And, the other side that I hear is sometimes, how do you do you see that confidence build at the same time as a business owner? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like what I've heard is, I'm building my business. The business gets all of the focus, the business to business to business, but what about me as the person that's really the person behind the business and how I'm taking care of myself? And so take us through a little bit of where you see that kind of unlocking in someone just by that little bit of consistency as a tip. Because I think that that's probably a secret key to reducing burnout too.
Yeah. I can use the same example from this client because this client also had another side hustle that she was doing that was considerably less money, but was generating a little bit of income, but a lot of time. And she told me within the last few months, like, I'm feeling burned out from doing all of this because she's just hustling to get more and more money. And so, what we were able to do was look at her budgeting spreadsheet and make adjustments to see, well, what do your finances look like if we take some of that side hustle income away? And having that ability to kind of forecast out or predict out into the future has really, I mean, that's something that's so important, and it's really given her a lot more peace of mind and a lot more confidence that she can scale back from that side hustle and still be able to meet her financial obligations, and not just obligations, but her goals, right? She's setting aside money for travel each week when she pays herself and for other fun things like that.
Mm.
And so now she's able to see, well, what is the actual impact of that? And so it becomes a situation where previously there was a lot of uncertainty and she was guessing, to now a situation where she can see the numbers. And so she's confidently able to say, okay, I can scale back with the side hustle, which really helps protect her mental health because she has more hours to focus on her instead of earning money.
Yeah, and I mean, this month is the theme of mental health awareness, and I can't emphasize enough for the listeners, what this being an entrepreneurial show, the entrepreneurial burnout is a real thing, and I come from a product background, so when we do products. We evaluate products, we create a product to fit a market need. Well, we're doing that as people, as business owners to create a product of ourselves to put into the community and into the market, and the market tells us, but we also got to get a return on investment into that product. Well, we're the product, so we're investing in ourselves from a place of skill sets and knowledge and confidence, and all of the things that we pick up along the way as an entrepreneur. So I think what you're describing, Kim, is this unrealized awareness until that point of clarity comes in. And kudos to you for helping, kind of guide your client through that because with clarity comes more confidence so you can make more decisions, educated and informed decisions. And then I can feel just how you're describing it what that client was probably going through with, oh, it's like a sigh of relief almost where, you get the clarity, you know where your investment of time is going, and you know where you want to get the return on that. So that's an amazing example and story. And thank you for sharing that. I hope that some of our listeners today, like, I hope you guys are just listening, going, okay, you're not the only ones that are dealing with this as an entrepreneur, and burnout is real. But there's this cultural do you kinda see it as, like, this machine? Like, the computers work the business, and the taxes and all of the financial calculations are, like, machine-like entries, but how do we keep the human in the business, Kim?
Ooh, what a good question. I think when you talk about keeping a human in the business, the thing that comes to mind for me is a couple clients I've interacted with over the last few months that have brought up ChatGPT in our sessions and
Okay.
how they have had a conversation with ChatGPT on a specific topic. And don't get me wrong, I love ChatGPT. I have the $20 a month subscription. I was using it a bunch earlier today. But there's some things that AI cannot give us. I mean, there's a lot of things that AI cannot give us. But I think one thing is a bit of peace of mind, right? I had one client who I was working with a couple weeks ago, and they had gotten some guidance from ChatGPT on how they should be doing this whole other like profit and loss statement for their business and for some like legal stuff. And we looked at it, and the paper said, or you can just submit this schedule from your tax return. But ChatGPT was like, you should definitely do this other P&L because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why are we overcomplicating it? Like, we don't need to do that, right? I think it's just having that peace of mind and that kind of judgment and kind of taking a step back and saying, does that really make sense?
Yeah.
I think is important. And I had another client who came to me with ChatGPT information. She was thinking about leasing some space for her business and subleasing it to other practitioners. And ChatGPT had helped her with this analysis. And we looked at it, and it was a good start, but it was missing a lot of things. It was
Yeah.
missing a lot of expenses. It wasn't calculating the revenue correctly. And I feel like, but for a lot of people, I have the benefit of having some of that knowledge from having worked in corporate finance. And I think if you don't have that knowledge, it's hard to know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's helpful to lean on people who do have that expertise. And,
Yeah.
I'm getting a little off track here, but I've done that a
No,
little too with like
No, I think
strategically
I mean,
investing.
but think about like the journey that someone goes through with AI. That could even be a great lead for you where somebody goes, I've used AI and I started with these boilerplate templates, but it's not everything that I need to think about. And I don't have the
Yeah.
depth of the knowledge sometimes in a solopreneur where it's like, I'm laser focused on I wear so many different hats in my
Oh,
business
yeah.
that, they don't really gain the depth because they don't have the time to stop and think. So they do need experts like you to kind of help them think about what they're not thinking about because you don't know what you don't know. So,
100%.
yeah,
And part
yeah,
of how I kind of tapped into my passion for helping solopreneurs and small business owners is from experiencing that same thing in my business, but more from a marketing perspective,
mhm,
right? Like you wear so many hats, and I'm trying to learn all of these new skills and figure out all of these different things. And I'm like, okay, there's social media and email marketing and SEO and my website, and just, I'm sure I've missed like 18 different ways of marketing, but just trying to figure it all out and strategize was very mentally overwhelming. Like, I started my business because I really want to help people with their money and I want to help them reduce their financial stress. And I
mhm,
did not set out to become a marketing expert. And I realized that a lot of people feel that way with their money too, right? They
yeah,
want to do what they're passionate about, they want to help their clients, but finances are one of the things that you have to figure out in order to have a business that supports your life, where you can pay yourself and stay in it, right? And not have to go back to a corporate job.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, the community that you sell into is not just a brick and mortar on Main Street in a town anymore. It's, a global population potentially, depending on your target market. It's a global, or it could be a wide community with lots of competitors that are online and brick and mortar that you have to, study and understand how you differentiate yourself so that you can go wear that sales hat or that marketing hat. And then you take that hat off and you come back to, oh, I got to look at my balance sheet and my cash flow statements to really understand how my business is doing. So, it's a gauntlet. It's a lot of so let's talk about all of those tools that you mentioned because you said, you probably left 18 off. Well, some business owners probably have, more than 18, but
Oh, yeah.
how do you help them really assess the tools that they do use when it comes to cost analysis? Like, do you have some ways of just for the listeners to kind of think about the the types of tech because AI subscriptions are becoming more and more common. Regular fixed fees for AI buckets versus the traditional types of tools. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, it is. I have found it is very easy to spend money in your business, right? Especially with AI and all of these marketing tools that are out there. It's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. That would be helpful too, right? It's hard. I have to rein myself in with this. So I totally get how people are struggling with that. The first thing that I recommend to people, because I went through this similar exercise with one of my clients earlier this year, is starting from that place of understanding where your money is going.
Okay.
And so that's going to look like for her, what we did is looked into the more detailed transaction level expenses for a period of a couple months. I
Okay.
know that's not sexy or super exciting, but that helped us uncover what was actually being spent. And we found thousands of dollars. I was going to say hundreds, but over a year, thousands of dollars of subscriptions that she was not even using. And so I would say that is a good place to start is and there are some tools, I think Rocket Money might have one, I don't know, but there's some software that have tools where it
Hmm.
will show you what all of your subscriptions are. So you could
Yeah.
also use that to help shortcut it. But yeah, I would say start with things you're not actually using. She had a faxing app. She's like, I don't fax anything in my business. I
Is
don't
that
need
even
this.
a thing?
Yeah. It was like a decent amount of money per month, too. Could also, if you have Apple, you could go look at your Apple subscriptions. That's where some of her stuff was. And just go through and start with, I'm not even using this. So
Right.
that's low hanging fruit. But so many of those things, right? We subscribe, we forget about it. And as your business gets bigger and you have more and more transactions and expenses running through it, it's easy to lose sight of some of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So that is one thing I'd say. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think that's one of the main tips is like, how do you really start breaking some of these things down? What's next?
So, next, I would say look for things that are duplicating effort, right? Do
Mm.
you have two subscriptions or two expenses that are essentially doing the same thing in your business, right? So you don't need Zoom and Teams. That might be a bad example because Microsoft Teams has maybe might be in a bigger Microsoft subscription. But thinking about that or thinking about if you have a Google Workspace subscription, it comes with Google Meet, right? People might not be as familiar with it, but it will give you the same functionality as Zoom. And here we're talking about smaller expenses, but that's where I'd look at things that are duplicating what another tool has. And I would also say start with the bigger amounts, right? If you have two things that are $2 each, or you cut something out that's $2, great, but it's not really very impactful. So start with the biggest amounts and work your way down. Ask yourself if you're using them, if you're getting the value out of it. This isn't as much for small business owners, but sometimes just price shop, right? I know there's many of us know about cable companies and calling to different cable companies, but that stuff really works. And ChatGPT and those types of services can probably help you with some of that as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm able to do with my clients as well is when we look through things, I'm able to eyeball some of these things and be like, oh, you're paying way too much for cable TV or internet, right? If you switch providers, you might be able to decrease it by whatever amount. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I'd recommend.
Oh, I think those are great starts. I think that, we've already established that, running a business and on top of your personal finances is a lot of, cognitive load. And I feel like there's this cultural message out there that, kind of wormholes everybody into if you're struggling with money, it's about discipline. It's about, lack of willpower. It's about lack of focus. And I can tell you're kind of pushing back on that because you're like, okay, look here and look in all these little tips and areas to start. But so, where does that narrative come from for you as far as like what you're seeing? Is that coming from just the way that they run the business? Is it something deeper rooted that you've noticed with your clients about this discipline and willpower and lack of focus? Or is that a societal message?
I think it's more of a societal message. I think that there is a place for willpower, but I also think that habits are a lot more powerful than people recognize. If your listeners have not read Atomic Habits or The Power of Habit, I highly recommend those two books. It helped me understand a lot of, my habits and those habit loops better. But I think just saying, "Oh, it's your willpower," is scientifically not accurate, actually, right? Because the habits are so much more powerful than we think, and you get into this, and there's your upbringing, there's all of these different things that are influencing culture, society, your emotions, right? Like, I eat more dessert when I'm stressed, and I think people tend to spend more money when they're stressed as well. It's complex. It's not as easy as just saying, "Spend less money," and I say that from a perspective of having that experience if I think about desserts. Like, I have a sweet tooth,
Yeah.
and I eat dessert, a little bit of dessert most nights, and I know it's not the healthiest habit, but it is a habit, and it is really hard to break out of, and for somebody to tell me, "You just need to try harder," feels like it is totally missing the mark and not really getting to the depth of what I'm experiencing. And I think somebody telling you that creates a lot of shame too. Because if somebody tells me, well, I just need to try harder to not eat dessert, then I feel like it's a failure. And
Yeah.
also, then I think it creates this idea, this deprivation mindset, right? If somebody tells me, don't eat dessert, the only thing that I'm sitting there thinking about is that cookie that I really want to eat.
Yeah.
And I think that approach is taken with money a lot of times too. You're in debt, don't spend anything, right? Only the essentials, eat beans and rice. And that's just not a healthy way to approach it because, yeah, maybe you pay off your debt a little bit faster, but then it's like a crash diet, right? You finish it and then you're probably going to rebound and end up back in the same situation. I've had quite a few clients come to me, just spoke with somebody yesterday who said this, that the challenge is this cycle of credit card debt. They pay it off, they charge the balance back up. They pay it off, they charge their balance back up. And that some would say is a lack of willpower. And I don't think that's the right way to approach it. I don't think it's helping anybody to just say try harder
Yeah.
because it's not empathetic at
Yeah,
all.
but do you think it's the credit cycle is more just to manage cash flow gaps? Because going back to your seasonal, experiences with that business owner, is there things that you explore with your clients about finding different like lines of revenue into the business? Is it always an expense cutting type of a measure when you're working with clients, or where does that journey kind of meander?
Yeah, it is not always an expense cutting exercise. I would say the first thing that I do with my small business owner clients is just get clear on what's coming in and what's going out to try and diagnose the opportunity. Like I had one client who said to me, I'm overspending in these areas. It's like, all right, well, we can look at that. But then when we really looked at the numbers, we realized that the amount of money that she was paying her employees as a percentage of revenue was very high. And so it just wasn't leaving very much left to cover the other expenses. And so people might think it's an overspending issue. Like in this case, she did. But when we looked at the numbers, that wasn't actually the biggest opportunity. So definitely not only focused on expense cutting, it is a full picture, right? In some cases, the answer really is you need to earn more revenue. Sometimes it is, but not always. So that
Yeah.
is the full picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that I mean, we gotta look at it from all of the hats in those cases where it's like you can cut as far as you can cut as far as expenses, but to the point where now I'm not able to run my business the way that it needs to. So what can I add? So that's where the product discussions come in. And I end up
Hmm.
with, some business owners or some founders sometimes where they're like, how do you even look at, what the market is telling you that it needs? How do I break the mold of what I'm offering and add something new? And a lot of the times it comes with, well, what are your clients asking you about that you don't already do? What is something
Hmm.
that they really ask you for more of that's not even on your product catalog list or your service offering list? Because sometimes there's hidden products or services just in what you have the most joy or the most passion giving your clients that they really respond to. So I'm really glad that that you kind of take it from that angle too, where it's, guys, it may not just be about, cutting costs and budgeting. It might be adding some things to really kind of restart that revenue stream for you. So
Yeah.
that's super cool. Well,
Or
let's talk a
increasing
little
prices too.
or prices. Yeah. Yeah.
Increasing prices, right? That's one thing that I looked
Right.
at with my client as well. This is the client that was experiencing that burnout. We were able to increase her prices, and then she had a similar amount of revenue without having to work so many hours.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
like
Kind of
the basic go ahead.
I was gonna say that's right under your nose sometimes, but we don't always think about that because we're so price averse ourselves to the cost of,
Yes.
things going up with inflation and things.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it gets back to your topic of commerce, right? And the exchanging of
Mhm.
value and what does somebody feel like it's the service is worth and what are they willing to pay?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, commerce is an interesting one. It's why I use the word intentionally versus just business or sales or, transactions, because the commerce piece brings the value exchange back in. And we all have knowledge and expertise that I think goes under realized sometimes. And we think we have to do something in a specific mode or template or, like, to your point, chat gpt gives you a boilerplate type of list of fees or schedules to look at, but then you really got to think about, what does it mean for me, authentically, to kind of really exchange the knowledge and expertise that I have. So let's talk a little bit about, if a small business owner is listening right now, Kim, and they're feeling this overwhelmed state just thinking about their finances. What's the single first thing that you'd want them to do today besides what we've already talked about? Or did we cover everything? Is it just like one honest, doable thing that you could just give them as a freebie today?
Yeah. So there we've talked about a lot of good things. I would say start with well, there's I have a couple ideas, but I'll pick
Okay,
one.
let's go with both of them. Yeah.
Start with figuring out how much you need to pay yourself to support your personal life. I think there's this idea that more revenue is always better, right? Grow, grow, grow. That's what success is. And that's not true, right? Success is you achieving whatever goal you have set out for yourself. And if your goal is to be able to support your personal life and also spend time with your kids or travel or take off 8 weeks a year, whatever your goal is. That's what success is, and that doesn't always mean earning more money. And I think starting with being really intentional about what you actually need to pay yourself and getting clear on that number helps give you a goal that you're working towards instead of this vague idea or this really goal you can never achieve of more is always better, right?
Yeah.
Because when is more enough?
Yeah. When is more enough? That is well, when is enough too? I mean,
Yeah.
what is enough? Like, what is enough?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that's a very subjective response that I think everybody can sit with listening to the show. And, as I listen kind of to myself a lot when I have these conversations with guests like you, I find myself going, what's the point of the show? The show is to really continue to unpack what does commerce mean and why are we in business? And when we're in business, who is it that we're really serving? And how is it that we really want to serve so that when we walk away from that exchange, that we're not only monetarily compensated, but we're spiritually compensated too, because otherwise you're just moving dollars for dollars, capital for capital without really achieving when we set up to be when we leave a corporate finance job like you did, Kim, and are you getting the fulfillment now in your world versus like are you achieving that success for yourself now or like how does being in business for yourself feel now?
That's a great question. It is entrepreneurship is an emotional roller coaster. I will
Amen.
say that.
Amen.
It I love working with clients and seeing the results that they get and, hearing their gratitude. It really fuels me. I love the control that I have over my time and my ability to work when I want and where I want and to do what I want. But it's also like I did take a big pay cut, right? So that is a reality of it. Thankfully, I'm in a place where I can afford that. But it's because it's also very can be very frustrating. It's like I have this great service. I know I can help people, but it's about connecting with those people and finding those people who are the right fit for my coaching.
Yeah.
So I am very happy with taking the leap that I did into entrepreneurship. I have learned so much, but it's also definitely harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I would echo that too. And I think that I love the art of podcasting here because it really gives people a chance to, one, connect in with stories that sound like them, feel like them, maybe even sound like the right or the same kind of business struggles that they've been experiencing. Getting time to just tune in and listen to individuals like us share, some of the things that they're trying. I hear sometimes, like those were some really good ideas on the show today. Thank you for those recommendations. Or, so and so story really landed with me. So, if anything, hopefully the audience got a chance to do a little bit of that with you. They got to feel a chance, maybe with just feel your heart and the servant leadership that's coming from you, because I feel it. So, I'm really happy to do that. And I know that there's so much emphasis on financial literacy right now. So, financial literacy being, how do we increase people's competence and confidence in whatever they're doing, whether it's personal or business. But I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing because whether it started with Vita and it activated something in your spirit, I think that there's a lot of organizations that would benefit by bringing someone in like you to kind of maybe help a team. And maybe there's some unique opportunities that come from being on the show for my audience because of who's listening and the type of channels that I, market to. But that's kind of the point of the show is how do we collaborate better? How do we
Mhm.
unpack the flow of value? So I think you've given us some really good tips and tools today. And I just really thank you for being on the show with me, Kim. So I wish you great luck in really touching the heart with the courage and the comfort right behind you on that sign. I love it. Courage and
Yeah, thank
comfort.
you. It actually
Yeah.
says courage over
Over
comfort,
comfort,
which
okay.
yeah,
I was thinking
it's
you're
from
making them
Brené
get
Brown.
I thought you were thinking you were gonna give them more comfort with their dollars
You
so that
know,
they had the courage to get out there and do what they wanna
I
do.
do endeavor to do that, but it's from Brené Brown. It's part courage
Love
over
her.
comfort is part of her definition of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and it really stuck with me because I love my comfort zone. And I love being in it, but it just I had never before reading that thought of courage and comfort as being kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think a lot of times I think of courage as like this big, brave thing that I do. And it was a different perspective for me to think about going out of my comfort zone and doing something uncomfortable as being an act of courage, of ordinary courage, as she talks about. So I have it on my wall to remind me of that.
Oh, I love that. And I actually use the word courage a lot because to truly unlock our wealth, right? We have a wealth of information and knowledge and expertise hiding inside of us. But we have to be courageous enough to unlock ourselves. So
Mhm.
wherever that is, if that's a comfort zone, if that's, knowledge or expertise or financial literacy that we need to pick up and gain, we got to be courageous enough to call that in and to ask for help in filling in some of the gaps so that we can feel confident. So, but thank you again for being on the show with us,
Yeah.
Kim. I hope that everybody listening, I hope you took something away from today's conversation. And thank you again for joining us. We'll put some of the ways to connect with Kim and some of the offers that she has. She's got some really great ways to kind of step into working with her. So I hope you guys check that out and we get you some visibility for all the amazing services that you're offering your clients from coast to coast, it sounds like. Oh,
Yep,
and there's
yep,
my cat.
anywhere in the US.
Yeah, that's
Well,
fantastic.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity
Of
to
course.
have a conversation with you and connect with your listeners.
Oh, thank you. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in today. That wraps up our show today, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for listening to Unlocking Commerce and Business. If this conversation resonated, here's what you can do. Subscribe for weekly conversations with survivors, innovators, and changemakers, building regenerative alternatives to extractive commerce. Share this episode with collaborators, partners, funders, and changemakers in your network. The people ready for restorative commerce need to hear these voices. Drop a comment below. Tell us what patterns you're recognizing or what solutions you're building. We read every one. Commerce is everywhere, and healing extraction patterns inside our communities creates regenerative commerce outside. Like a lighthouse, we're here, exploring and cutting through fog, pointing toward what works. Welcome to the era of restorative commerce. Until next time, explore courageously, build sovereignly. You are the source and store of value. This is Connie Davis signing off. Thank you for being here.